Well, hello. We're going to just have a quick chat about the Mimos study, and particularly talking to Sarah Kendal, who was our lead for lived experience involvement in the Mimos study. Just as a reminder, I'm Liz Hughes, and I'm a professor of nursing, and I was chief investigator of Mimos. And Sarah, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, hi, I'm Sarah Kendal. I was the PPI lead for Mimos, which means that I facilitated the lived experience advisory group. My background is in mental health nursing.
Great. So Sarah, first of all, I suppose just going right back to the start and thinking about the importance of lived experience, what do you think was what do you feel is the value of this involvement, and why was it so important in Mimos?
Well, I can't see the point of doing any research without people who know most about the issues. So, I mean, that's my bottom line, really. So I suppose the questions are how you go about it, and I think we're still learning how best to do that.
I agree, and I think from my recollection, when we started, we both done mental health research before with people with lived experience of using mental health services, for example, and this felt to me a bit different because we were interested in sort of gathering a group of people together who, by the nature of something unpleasant had happened to them, or some connection to that topic, that their lived experience of something like that, plus using services that to support them following that, felt different. And I think we were very kind of aware of some of the kind of challenges of that as well.
Well, one thing that I think is really important to get away from is the idea that people with lived experience have to tell their story. I mean, my thinking is you're going to benefit from the wisdom of people with lived experience, so they can tell you how to organize things or design things or make sure the project goes smoothly. It's not about knowing what the lived experience, knowing the details of that lived experience. And it's astonishing, really, that it's taken such a long time for research to cotton onto that idea.
Yeah, no, I agree, and I think for us, as a group, I think central to anything we did is we wanted to do it in a way that would be maximize the comfort and reduce any potential distress of our participants. Because one of the things we were planning to do in the Mimos, and what we actually did, was recruit people shortly after attendance at a sexual assault referral centre, and we were then wanting to sort of screen them for mental health and substance use issues, which again, is a hard, quite a hard thing to ask people to do. And I guess for me, as the lead, I was very conscious that felt like quite a big ask for people, and we wanted, I suppose, we sought the wisdom of the people with lived experience to know how to do that best as well.
One example was that the strategy for trying to approach people to see if they wanted to be potentially interviewed. And so the lived experience advisory group said, well, no, don't be walking up to people who've just presented at STARC and asking them about research. Just maybe give them a leaflet, or ask somebody else to give them a leaflet that they can read when they want to read it. So that sort of thing. Stuff about timing is it was a good example of how you benefit from the wisdom of people who know what they're talking about.
Absolutely. And
yeah,
And those are exactly the things that were, when we wrote our protocol for the ethics application, the lived experience input into that was essential. And I think we had some face-to-face and online involvement for that. Actually, it's probably worth saying a little bit about how the mechanisms of how we did actually involve people in a variety of ways, because we were quite flexible, weren't we?
We were, yeah. So the idea was that people could contribute or engage with it on their own terms, which meant being really flexible and open to what that would be like. So we had some face-to-face meetings, and this is all even pre-COVID, some people wanted to engage with what was going on but didn't want to turn up in person. So some people were contributing by email. So I'd be saying, well, there's going to be this meeting. Do you want to come? If you don't want to come, here are the topics. Sometimes they're sending people documents. Just send me back your thoughts. And so there was that going on. And there were people who wanted to engage with it but not go to a meeting, but would talk on the phone or by text or by video link, not at the meeting but before.
Yeah.
So there was those different kind of media, but as well as that, people were stepping in, engaging with it, and then we never heard from them again, or we didn't hear from them for ages, and then they'd come back.
Yeah.
And we were very consciously not pursuing people to say, do you want to do this? Do you want to do that? So it was quite difficult to kind of get a sense of a group contribution where people weren't officially signed up to a group and had commitments to the group. So we're trying to make it so that people didn't have to commit, because we recognised people's ability to commit would probably fluctuate.
Yeah.
So it was a new way of, for me, it was a new way of consulting with a group. And I think it went all right, but it was kind of complicated from an administrative point of view, I would say.
Yeah. And I think the benefits that I observed was that we were able to engage people from different parts of the country, because often when I've had these groups before, they tend to need to be fairly local to where the research centre is, because in the old days before COVID, everything was pretty much done face to face, wasn't it? And there was an expectation that people would get to meetings at a certain time. Whilst sometimes we forget people have got lives, they've got caring responsibilities, they've got jobs, they've got other stuff to do. And I think that even the flexibility before COVID allowed people, like you say, to dip in and dip out, and that's probably okay. And there's probably something there about taking the learning from this experience and using it in the future, and about how we sell this experience to people and what they potentially could get out of it for themselves in terms of, a new experience, learning about how a project might work, having layers of ways of involvement depending on what you want. Not everyone wants to be in the thick of it. Some people are quite happy to have a small part. And I think as well, it was really important that we paid people we didn't just pay any travel, that we paid people for their time. So as they did things, we would pay them, the standard kind of rate for involvement. Yeah. And I think recognizing that expertise that they're bringing, it's enhancing our research, and therefore it's important that we pay people.
One thing that I was really pleased about was that the NIHR, who we had to report to, so the funders for the project, they didn't insist on knowing details of people in the lived experience advisory group, because I wasn't going to be sharing people's names or asking them questions about things like age, ethnicity, sexuality. I wasn't willing to be providing that information. And it was really pleasing to me that the funders didn't insist on it, because I thought they might have done. Because
Yeah.
sometimes in the past they've wanted lots of information about all kinds of details, but we just made the argument that it wasn't appropriate to be providing personal details about people.
No. And
So yeah,
just, I mean, the terms of personal details, that was just purely between the budget, the university that held the budget, and the payment, and that was just a very specific and narrow,
yes,
but that was actually not connected to our project either. So
that's right. Yeah.
so I mean, that's, I think with us, in our minds, we were interested in diversity within the league, and I think in terms of addressing that, rather than just get a load of stats about the diversity, I think your outreach into certain kind of pockets of groups would have helped ensure that we did have a diversity of voice as well.
Yeah. I did at one point during the project, I did meet with a group working in a similar area, and their lived experience advisory group was quite different from ours, because it was a closed group, and the people knew each other pretty well, and seemed to have been meeting regularly, the same people regularly and frequently throughout the project. And I can see advantages in that, because you can have a kind of you can have clearer objectives and sign things off. But I wasn't operating like that. Ours was a lot looser and a lot more on the terms of the people who were contributing.
Yeah.
But I can see,
I
can see the argument in having a closed group.
Yeah.
But also I didn't want our group to kind of somehow mutate into any sort of therapy group, because that wasn't appropriate either.
No. And it feels like there's something about sort of being clear about what the role is, and what levels of support we can offer, but also signposting people if they are in our lived experience kind of group, virtual group. If there are issues, then being able to signpost people to other agencies that can provide that sort of support as well.
Yeah.
And being really clear about what the role is, I think is really helpful. But and I think even during COVID, I mean, obviously we had plans to do much more involvement with people, but the lockdowns and COVID suspended our study for a while, and I think we lost a bit of momentum in terms of how much we connected, because we literally had to go desk-based and cease all our research, face-to-face research, for quite a chunk of that spring to pretty much September of 2020. And I think because we weren't drawing on the lived experience during that time, because there was that pause in research, I think we probably lost a bit of momentum and enthusiasm. But I also think COVID affected everybody in different ways, and people had their own complications, which meant they were less able to be involved in things as well, especially if you're homeschooling. You've got people in the house, whereas you could Skype you privately, suddenly the whole house is working at home or in the house. It just changed the whole thing, didn't it? So we were able to do some stuff, but it felt like it
got a bit disjointed. But I think with a long project, there are those like stretches of time where perhaps the ethics application is being prepared or something, and there's nothing apparently going on, so people can disengage then, because it seems like everything's fizzled out. And like I was saying before, it's quite difficult to sort of be flexible without coming across as vague. That can be difficult.
Yeah, and there's and of course we had a project plan, which got blown out the water because of COVID. So even in terms of like giving people like, well, at this point we'll be doing this at this point, and suddenly we were literally operating on a month by month basis about where we were at, what we could start again, what we couldn't do, as well. So yeah, I'm sure challenging for everybody and challenging for
Yeah.
for involvement. And I think lots of learning to take forward to other projects, and I think it's been a really interesting experience, as well. And and I think I'm very grateful to people like Faye Maxted, who was involved in the project from Survivors UK, and obviously Conchetta Perot from Survivors Voices, who came along to some of our meetings when we were meeting face to face and virtually, to offer her insight from as a representative of Survivors Voices. But obviously their charter was really helpful in terms of thinking not just about how we did the league, but how we worked with the participants as well. And so I think we had our league, and we also had some real expert advisors as well that we could draw upon.
Yes. Yeah.
Which I think was really helpful as well.
Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you very much, Sarah. And
Welcome.